Hi there, and welcome to a sped up video of me drawing Baby Yoda. This is a thing on DeviantArt. They posted a May the 4th be with you kind of tutorial, so I'm following the tutorial basically. I thought it was a harmless bit of fun. I'm a fan of The Mandalorian, so this was well timed really, because The Mandalorian's obviously not long finished. Obviously waiting for the movie to come out whenever that may be. I haven't really looked into it myself, but I'm quite excited to see that when it eventually comes out. So this is actually a dead simple thing to draw, perhaps because the tutorial explains it so well. So if that is the case, thanks very much to DeviantArt for sharing it. But yeah, he's a cute little character. My rendition may or may not turn out particularly well, but I'm quite pleased with it, considering I've only been learning to draw for, I think, what must now be about 5 or 6 weeks. I feel like my pen control and my drawing skills are coming along quite nicely. So yeah. So as you can see, I've finished the sketch. I realised after I'd done it that I'd drawn the sketch on the background layer, which is a bit of a noob mistake, so I had to make some adjustments here so that that wasn't the case, and then I can drop the opacity of that sketch. And then this is probably one of the biggest challenges for me, is line work. Having the confidence to draw a line from start to finish without jabbing away and drawing it multiple times. So using a brush without opacity and just being kind of definite with my lines is something that I need to practice. So this was actually kind of came up at the right time. So just sort of basically inking in the details that I've already sketched. And again, some of my lines do still look a bit jagged where I've gone over them maybe once or twice, but I think my line work is definitely improving. As you can see, I'm kind of being a lot more confident with drawing my lines now. And I mean, the beauty of Photoshop is if you don't do it right the first time, you can just hit Control and Z and do it again. So why I've got no little confidence when it comes to doing it is, you know, a good question. Good question, well asked. I'm glad you asked. So it's a cute little character, and it's very simple to draw. Pretty much anyone can follow the tutorial and do it. I would imagine that DeviantArt will be flooded with pictures of Grogu over the next few days. So I don't anticipate that this is going to get me get me much recognition, but I'm happy enough. So now we can bin that sketch layer and tidy up any things that I feel like I might have done not quite as well. I feel like I made his mouth a little bit too frowny, so we'll fix that and move on to adding some shade once I've added a few more wrinkles, because Grogu is a wrinkly little bugger. So at this point I faff around for about 5 minutes trying to get the selection right, and then I realise that I've left a tiny little open space in the bottom right hand corner of this face, which is knackering my selection. So it takes me a couple of minutes to spot that, and then when I do spot it, you'll see me fix it, because that happens. So I undo that and I scratch my head for a few minutes, as noobs often do, and then eventually realise, that must be the problem. So I grab my brush tool and I fix it. And then that means that I can do my selection properly. And then that means that I can now fill this shape with a colour, and then I'm going to pick a colour that looks about right. And now I can start painting. Now, foolishly, I didn't give myself a colour palette, which I should have done really. And a bit later on in the drawing, I do actually put a colour palette down, because I realised that that's probably one of the first things that I should have done. But, you know, learning the lessons. So just adding the colours to the areas that they're relevant. Trying to get a decent colour for his jacket and his collar. And then basically just trying to colour in the colouring in between the lines without going over the lines, which is mostly okay. I do screw up a little bit, as you can see just there, so I do need to go back and fix those details. And I do a little bit on his hands as well, so I need to fix those. But there we go. So now we can add the black to the eyes. And again, I probably should have just used a brush with no opacity here. Around the round hard brush would have done the job, but you know, hindsight is a beautiful thing. There you go. So as you can see now, I have the idea. Why don't I do myself a color palette on the screen so that I can always get the same colors? Just a little bit of refinement, or in this case, semi-refinement, and mainly because I go over all the color here, as you can see, filling it in, doing a great job of making the color look a bit thicker and a bit more full, and then realize I've done it on the wrong layer. So I have to move that layer to the back and do it all again. But lesson learned. Again, many lessons learned. Yep, so at this point I go to delete that detail and realise, hang on a minute, how did I go over the line? Oh, I've drawn it on the wrong friggin' layer, so move that down to the bottom and add another layer and go over everything again. And it's these kind of silly little mistakes that I will learn to rectify. It's just one of those things, you know, as you learn from your mistakes. You can tell me till you're blue in the face how to do something, but until I have a go the hard way myself and make all those mistakes, you might as well be talking to a brick wall, to be honest. So now the colours are looking a little bit more full. I'm actually kind of not too displeased with the way his jacket looks, because his jacket is made of a natural fibre. It has different variations in colour anyway, so I don't really feel the need to go and mess around with that too much. But I'm not happy with the colour of the ears. I think it needs to be pinker, more pink. If pinker is a word, I think it's not, so I'm going to go in there and put that in. It is quite bright, so I'll probably do a little bit of blending and a little bit of shading in there. I might even draw some veins in there from the translucency of his ears, perhaps. I think it's round about at this point where I start faffing around, wondering about brushes, because in the tutorial, the tutorial maker has a lot of cool brushes that he can use to create a fur effect, which I don't currently have. So at some point in the video you'll see it'll quickly flip to a slightly different looking version of his drawing, because I'll have done stuff because I forgot to hit the record button again. But I actually went and downloaded a couple of brushes that will enable me to add more of a fur-like effect, just to make the top of his head and his little collar look a little bit better. So yeah, you'll see some blending happen in a minute off camera. Apologies for that. I do try to do it with a couple of different brushes before I go and download some, but eventually I just end up going online and getting some more. And then, as if by magic, I add some reflection to his eyes. This is where I start messing around with different smudge brushes, trying to get a sort of a fur effect, realise that it's not happening, and then go off to get some online. So you'll see the reflections in his eyes dramatically change in a second, and that'll be because I went online and found some better brushes. So I do actually blend the corners of the ears a little bit just to make it look like a slightly less hard transition, because that is a bit jarring without the blending done. So as you can see, the ears are blended slightly. I'll spend a couple more minutes messing around trying to get the fur looking right, and then I give up and start doing some shadows in his ears. And then once I've done that, I'm going to start trying to add a glow effect in there, which basically just undoes the shadows that I've done. But lesson learned again. So I get a sort of glow translucency look, and then I just add a couple of dark shadows where veins or blood vessels might be in his ears, and then go for another kind of glow. Too much orange there, so I go back up to a more bright colour. I just add a slight sort of hint of glow into his ears. So I'm pretty happy with most of the shadow and highlights that I've added to the image at this point. Added some around the eyes as well, and the bottom of the mouth, just to make the mouth look a bit more three-dimensional, make the wrinkles look a bit more three-dimensional. So this is at the point where I've downloaded the fur brush, and as you can see, I've never used it before, so it takes me a minute or two to kind of get my head around how it works, because I can see that there's green appearing in my collar, so I suddenly realised that it actually takes into consideration the background colour. But there we go, now it's making a little bit more sense. And then I sort of correct the slightly weird effect that I've got going on with his forehead. And then I try to blend it so that it's not quite as garish. Realise that that's not going to work with that brush. So again, experimenting with different brushes to see what I can do. Eventually I'll get something a little bit more reasonable. And I'm going to add some more shadows and highlights to the image just to give it more of a three-dimensional look. Not too many though, mainly on the top of the head where his wrinkles might be, or the head shape might be slightly wonky. And then I'm going to add a rim light. So you can see I'm going to do blue on one side, red on the other, kind of reminiscent of the old Star Wars games where you had the blue signifying the light side and red signifying the dark side. So that basically wraps this drawing up, but thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed watching that, and don't hate my drawing too much. You can see it on my DeviantArt account if you want to, along with all the other drawings that I create when I'm practicing. But either way, thanks very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. But until then, you take damn good care of yourselves, alright? Bye bye.